Gonna do another basketball video. This one is gonna be the great Shaquille O'Neal, one of the greatest centers in professional basketball history, versus Dirk Nowitzki, who was a power forward and a center in the NBA. Two of the best big men in the NBA, and we're gonna break down who we think is the best basketball player. Now, Shaquille O'Neal got drafted in the 1992 NBA draft and got his start in 1993 NBA season, where he was selected number one pick of the Orlando Magics. Now, Shaq played on this basketball team for about 5 to 6 seasons, and he was the best player in the game. He was bigger, he was stronger, he was faster, and every time he slam dunked the basketball, he destroyed at least half a dozen basketball courts, because he kept slam dunking so hard, the glass shattered, the glass break. And, of course, he was with the young Penny Hardaway. Now, during the season, Shaq would get like about some 20 blocks, 20 rebounds. He would score anywhere between 20 to 40 points a game, and he had a weakness. He could not make free throws. And Shaq was like 7'1", 300 pounds of muscle. And Shaq was like, what if the Incredible Hulk could play basketball? And he was very dangerous on offense and very agile in his younger years. Now, by the time Shaquille O'Neal got to his second or third season, he was a candidate to be on the first all defensive team, first offensive team, and then finally he got to the point where he got injured in his fourth season, and after playing 4 years with the Orlando Magic, they had made it to the NBA Finals. In the Eastern Conference Finals in 1994, they knocked off and dethroned, I think, the Miami Heats. They beat the Pacers. They would take out the Miami Heats. They would beat I think the first round was knocking off the Miami Heats. Then the second round was to knock off the Pacers, and the third round was to knock off the New York Knicks. And then they had advanced to the NBA Finals, and they would go up against. No, that was 1995. 1995, they knocked off Michael Jordan and those Chicago Bulls, and then they made it to the NBA Finals that year. And it was a young Shaquille O'Neal against a primed Akeem Olajuwon in the NBA Finals. And they would lose in 5 games. And he lost his first NBA Finals. And by the 1996 season, he wanted to be traded to Los Angeles, and they did. And he was teamed up with Kobe Bryant. And these two future Hall of Famers would win basketball games. Now, they would lose to teams like the Portland Trail Blazers, the Utah Jazz, for a number of years. And then finally, by 2000, they got their act together. They started playing like a functional unit team, and they would go on a tear. They would win some 45, 55 games, and would be, I think, either number 2 in the West at that point. And then they would make the playoffs. The first round, they knocked off I think that first round, they knocked off a weak Phoenix Suns. Second round, they took out the Jazz. Third round, they killed San Antonio. And then they went to the NBA Finals and faced them Indiana Pacers, and then won a championship. And then the second year, they won another championship by beating Allen Iverson and them 76ers. And then the third year, they took out Jason Kidd and them New Jersey Nets. And they won 3 championships 3 years in a row. They had a chance to win 4, but they lost to the Spurs. And then in 2003, they lost to them Spurs. And then in 2004, they returned back to the finals and lost to the Detroit Pistons in 5 games. And in that series, Shaquille O'Neal, he put up his best numbers, but there were not enough to win a championship. And after, being in the playoffs for like 7 or 8 years, right at the age of 34, going on 35, Shaq and Kobe just couldn't see eye to eye, and Shaq found himself demanding a trade to go to the Miami Heat, where teamed up with Wade and helped him win the championship in 2006, where Shaq won his 4th title. And then in 2007, they got eliminated first round by those Chicago Bulls. And then by 2009, Shaq found himself with those Phoenix Suns. Then he found himself with the Cleveland Cavaliers towards the end of his career, and then to finish it out with the Boston Celtics. Now, Shaq's been in the NBA for about 16, 17 seasons, and, you know, and I would say in the first 10 years of his prime, no one could stop Shaq. No one could guard Shaq. No one could shoot over Shaq. No one could defend Shaq. Like, it was hard to stop him in the paint. You know, it was difficult to get around him. And even if you could shoot him over him, you had to do it at the top of the key. The first 10 years, I would say he was the most dominant basketball player in the NBA, and it was hard to stop Shaq. Now, towards the end of his prime, he wasn't in his prime, but he still was hard to stop. Like, even when he was with the Miami Heats, the Phoenix Suns, he still was a threat. It's when he got to Cleveland that he had too many knee injuries. Like, all those injuries just hurted him. And then when he got to Boston, he just became a shell of himself. He wasn't the same player. He moved too slow. He was non-responsive. He was only putting up 20 points a game. He wasn't scoring 30 or 40 points anymore. He was coming off the bench. He was just behind Kevin Garnett. And some of the times where he did score 30 points, they came in moments where Kevin Garnett's hurt. They don't have nobody down below. And we saw small little flashes of what he used to be in Orlando and LA and Miami. But when we saw him get to towards the end of his career, too many injuries. It's like had Shaq not been injured 10 times in his career, there's no telling how many championships Shaq could have won. There's no telling what he could have done. Like, when Shaq got to Phoenix, he was injured. A lot of people don't realize that for 2 years while being in Phoenix, he was injured. When he got to Cleveland, he still was injured. And when he got to Boston, he wasn't injured no more. It's just that his body was beat up. He couldn't do anything. Now we look at Dirk Nowitzki, who found himself in the 1996 NBA draft. And he was picked and selected to the Dallas Mavericks, where he would be teamed up with his best friend, Steve Nash. Now, this Dallas team hadn't really came to life yet until 1998-1999 NBA season. So after 4 seasons, they made a rational decision. They would trade Steve Nash for Jason Kidd, and they got much further in the season. 30, 40, 50 games in the season, Dirk Nowitzki dropped 40 points 7 times. 7 times in his career, he scored 40-point games. And then there's only 3 games in his whole career where he scored 50-plus points. I think he scored his first 50-point game and sent the game into 2 overtimes against their rival, I think, San Antonio. And then the second game, he scored 50 points. He did it against Houston, and then he scored his third 50-point game against them Lakers in the 2001-2002 NBA season. I think he scored his third 50-point game of his career. So he put up some strong numbers the minute he broke in. And for a guy that was 7 feet tall, either between 6'11" to 7'1", with a big, massive frame of 250 pounds, for a guy that's German, that's tall, he was good for playing power forward and center, and he could play the small, I think, either point guard or shooting guard. He could hit 3-pointers. Like, it was amazing to see a guy of his talent hit threes as if he was a guard. And he had long-range shots. Like, he could shoot on top of the key. He could shoot right underneath the basket. And it didn't matter if he was 10 feet, 15, 20. He could be 30 feet away, and he would still hit deep threes. That's how deadly of range Dirk Nowitzki had. And the way he would just lean back with the hand like this and hit the three, he would do it all weird looking, and the shot would still go in. and he could contest people's shots, and then he could trade shots. Like, he could keep up with people like Kobe Bryant, Tracy McGrady, and he would be able to score as many points as they did. And he was good at getting 20 blocks, 20 rebounds. He made 60 to 65, sometimes 70% good at the free throw line. And then he peaked in his 2000s. Between 2004 to 2007, he had his biggest peak as far as what he could do at that level. You know, he took the MVP from Steve Nash, which, of course, in 2006, he went to the NBA Finals, lost to the Miami Heat. He put up some good numbers in that NBA Finals series against the Miami Heat. It's just, unfortunately, Wade, and Shaq was too much. And then in 2007, he had his best year of just dropping 30 points for the whole season, and you get eliminated first round against them Golden State Warriors, which is not exactly something I don't think he likes to talk too much about, because it was embarrassing. You know, you get MVP, you become the best player, you put up these great numbers for the whole season, and then you get thrown by a Golden State Warriors team in 2007 in the first round of the playoffs. 2008, he got revenge on that team. 2009, he suffered a serious ligament injury. And then 2010, he missed most of the 2010-2011 season. So that was like 3 years Steve Nash didn't play that very good. And towards the end of 2010, going to 2011, they made it to the NBA playoffs. And they basically just killed everyone in the rounds. You know, they killed the Lakers when they faced them. They knocked out the Jazz. They sucker punched Oklahoma City Thunder and found themselves in the 2011 NBA Finals against the Miami Heat in an NBA Finals rematch. And again, Dirk Nowitzki put up strong numbers. He showed that he could take on and contain LeBron James and won a championship. And that was probably the last time we saw Dirk in his prime, because once we fast approach the 2012-2013 season, he had injury again. And then the 2014-2015 season, he recovered from injury, but his numbers had declined. Like, now you could see that he was moving slow. He couldn't play that very good without the basketball. He would be taken in and out of the game. And then the 2016-2017 season, you could tell he was done. You could tell he was way past his prime. You could just tell this weren't the same Dirk Nowitzki that we're used to seeing. And now approaching the 2018-2019 season, he's managed to last longer than Shaquille O'Neal. He managed to last longer than David Robinson, Tim Duncan. He's managed to outlast most of the big men. You know, including Dwight. He's managed to outlast all of them. Despite being past his prime, he can, on an occasion, Dirk can still give you 20, 30 points, and only if he deeps inside himself he can drop 40 points. So on occasion he can give you 20 to 30 points. But you can see that the writing's on the wall. Now, somebody might ask me, who you think is better? Now, I would say for the first 10 to 11 years, Shaquille O'Neal in his prime, nobody could touch. Dirk Nowitzki in his prime, if you had a Shaq or a Shaquille O'Neal, you could beat Dirk Nowitzki. If you had a Shaquille O'Neal or a Tim Duncan, you could beat. Or if you had a Dwight Howard, you could beat Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk Nowitzki stayed in his prime just as long as Shaq did, but you could also tell that somewhere down the line after he won a championship, you could see his numbers slowly go down, little by little, year after year. The numbers started to go down, and even though he could shoot on the same level as Larry Bird, it started to affect the ability of his shooting. So if you took the Shaq from Miami or from LA and you put him against that version of Dirk, he probably would still beat Dirk. And if you just think about it, he went against the LA version Shaq. He went against that Miami Shaq. But the Shaq that we saw in Phoenix, he easily beat. He easily dominated the Shaq that we saw in Cleveland and even in Boston. So he was able to beat Shaq towards the end of his prime. So I would say by a slight edge, by a slight margin, if we're talking about just pure talent-wise, Dirk could make the free throws. Shaq struggled to make the free throws. Dirk could play multiple positions. Shaq could just play one position. Shaq, the first 10 or 11 years, was dominant until injuries came. Dirk Nowitzki has injuries throughout his career, but found ways to still play at a high level. And only until after winning a championship in his second finals that his numbers declined. So I would say by a slight edge, Dirk over Shaquille O'Neal. I know some people are going to be furious when they find out that I chose Dirk Nowitzki over Shaq. It's not just who's the big man. It's who was able to, last longer. And he managed to do what most big guys don't do. He managed to last longer. And to outlast Shaq, that's hard to pull off. So, yeah. That's my third episode. All right, peace.